Um, the Rebbe was discussing over here the two interpretations, what it means, Kelim Reikim Al Tamiti, in the explanation of the Alter Rebbe about the neshama, that while it complains that the Ava V'yira that it had is being hijacked by the Nefesh Habahamis and the Guf, how should he still continue? So the Rebbe explained two interpretations that the Kelim Reikim, that he should continue doing the Kelim Reikim. Either it means that it should be done empty, meaning without avavira, without love and fear, just do mitzvahs, Kelim Reikim, do bring Kelim, many Kelim as you can. In those kelim, you'll sprinkle in the level of Mesiras Nefesh, that Osuch Shemen, that Etzem HaNefesh. That's one interpretation. And the other interpretation, that kelim reikim represents the level of bittul, to keep on telling yourself that I'm an empty vessel and I am not reaching and being what I should be. It's going to become bitter because of that, because of his distance. Now, through this bitterness, he will get the Yisrei Na'ir M'tei HaChoshech. In both cases, he will bring about a greater light. The Rebbe is going to explain now that the greater light, or it's called Banoisar, V'at u'banayich tichyi banoisar, you and your children will live with the leftover after you pay off all your debtors. Then you will be able to live from the leftover. That's called the noisar. That noisar, he says, that is the Yisrein ha'oir habo min ha'choshech. The light that comes after the challenge, after the cry out of the neshama about the challenges, there's Yisra Na'oir. The Rebbe says, but it's a higher level, the second interpretation, the level of bittul, the level of being bitter, brings out a higher madrega than even that level of Mesiras Nefesh in the first interpretation, that you're doing mitzvahs with Ava V'yira, you bring out. It's all interpreting the words Banoisor in the Pasik. Tichyi v'atu banayich tichyi banoisor. The Rebbe says, while the level of Mesiras Nefesh in the first interpretation, that you're doing the mitzvahs with the Etzen Haneshama, while it reaches into the level of Ein Sof, that is higher than Giluyim, but it's still connected. You're still a Metzias, it's still connected with your Metzias. The second level, which is the level of Bittel, that level of Kelim Reikim, in which you consider yourself a non-Metzias, gets from the level of Yoshes, Choshech, Sisrei, in the place where Hashem is hidden all by himself, which is a greater and a higher level. Let's look inside. Yes, Leimar, we can say the Yisrein ha'oir habo min ha'choshech, the advantage of the oir that comes from the darkness, which is in the pasuk interpreted, va'at ubonayich tichyi banoisar, you and your children will live in the noisar. Noisar means on the Yisrael. You will live with this advantage. So, lehapirush bekelim rekim al tamiti. according to the first interpretation, that don't have few empty vessels, but many vessels. So we have actually the second interpretation. He starts off here that when we say she is boinen harbe eichshu klerekom, to reflect a lot how you are an empty vessel. Hunaila, this is a greater level, that light, yoiser, more mi yisrein ha'oir, than the advantage of the life, noiser, lehapirush bekelim reikim al tamiti, according to the first interpretation, that said that what is the meaning of empty vessel? Don't make few, bring a lot of empty vessels. Sheyasik b'toiro mitzvahs av shehein b'li avivira, even though they're without avivira. The advantage of the light that comes from the choshech is a higher light in the second interpretation, in the interpretation of knowing that you're an empty vessel, that's your reflection. That light is even greater. That noiser, that yisrein, is greater than the light that comes from the first interpretation that you're doing without Abba V'yira. The Hine explains like this. There's two aspects in the fact that there's an advantage to the light of the darkness. Two ideas here. Number one, there's the advantage of the light in order to illuminate the darkness. Since it's a very dark place, it's a very far place, so you need additional light so that light can reach even far away. In order to illuminate in a far and very dark place, then you need a very great light. So that's one idea of Yisrein Ha'oir min HaChoshech. You need advantage, you need great light, because you have to come to a place which is very dark. The K'moi Kain, and the same thing is Ugam Benegeya Laha Yisrein. Also, as we're translating over here, the Noiser, Tichyi Ba Noiser, the Yisrael shall yidei esek ha'teiro mitzvahs b'li avim. Even though we're working and occupying ourselves with Torah and mitzvahs, and it's an empty vessel because we don't have avivira b'li avivira. So that's an advantage. What does it mean? How does a person occupy himself in Torah mitzvah without aviyira? It's mesiras nefesh. The zeh shehu oisek b'Torah mitzvahs hagam she'ein le'av aviyira. Why is he occupying himself in Torah mitzvahs even though he has no love and no fear? Hu mipnei toikev ha'hiskashrus sheloi be'elikus. That is because the forceful connection that he has with godliness, shemitzad etzem haneshama, which is based on the essence of the soul. That's his essence. That's the connection. Shalamayla mikoiches hagiluyim, which is higher than koiches hagiluyim. Okay, so this is a high level. He has no avavira, so there is no inner koiches pnimiyim to motivate his there's no avavira to motivate his mitzvahs, his Torah mitzvahs. He's a klirekom. He's an empty. He doesn't have avavira, but he has the essence of the neshama. He has the higher than the koiches hagiluyim, higher than the revealed koiches, which is the source and the motivations for his Torah mitzvahs. But this is just higher than the koiches hagiluyim. But then we have another level. There's an additional idea in the advantage of light over darkness. Shal yidei hamerirus ma'achoshech hamastir eire yizborech. Through his bitterness of the darkness that hides his blessed light. That bitterness brings out and reveals a higher level, nimshach mibechinas yoshes choshech sisrei. The level which is called in the pasuk, he places darkness, that is where he obscures himself in darkness, which means it's a level of darkness. It's not even a level of light. It's choshech shelemayla me'or. It's a darkness which is higher than light. It's not that light doesn't reach there, but the thing is that it's even higher and greater than light. What kind of a light does a person mamshich through the level of kelim reikim, the level of bittul? He gets to the light, which is a level of darkness, which is higher than light. Which would be a higher level, even than the great light that shines even in a dark place. That was the level you attained from Yisrael Menacheshech. When you do it, Avivira, you get a very high light that can illuminate even the dark places. But now we're talking about through the level of Bittul, Kelim, Reikim. We get to the level of Choshech, which is higher than light. This is the advantage, which the pasuk says, "Tichyu b'noiser," you live with the advantage. Shal yidei ha'hizboinenus eich shehu klei rekom. Through his reflection, how he is an empty vessel. Dal yidei ha'merides mizeh shehu klei rekom choshech. Through his bitterness, he reflects that he's an empty vessel. And through this bitterness, that he's an empty vessel, that he's dark. You reach darkness which is higher than earth. So there's two levels that you can talk about. One level of very powerful light that can reach a place of choshech, and the other level is to reach a level which is not even called light. It's called choshech. It's not even light. It's a higher than light altogether. The first level interpretation that you're doing mitzvahs without avivira, but with mesiras nefesh, reaches you to that big light that shines in a faraway place. But the level that you do mitzvahs, that you feel bittul, you feel bitter, that you feel that you're an empty vessel, a klirekom, that gives you a higher level, to the level of choshech sisrei, which is higher than earth altogether. Gimel. To understand this idea in more details, we can understand it based on what it says in Kutei Torah. The inyan atu banayich tichi benoisad. When we say here in this pasuk, you and your children will live with the noisar, who al derech masha amru razal, is similar what our sages tell us al haposik lish'edis nachalose. This is a pasuk in Micha. We say it all the time, that the Eibishter is acts kindly lish'edis nachalose. What is the meaning lish'edis nachalose? The pasuk says, Mi el kamoicha noisa oven ve'ever al pesha lish'edis nachalose. The Eibishter forgives us. So it says there lish'edis nachalose. Literally means l'shedis nachalose, the leftover of his inheritance. Unfortunately, there's a lot of Yidden that have passed on, But for those who are left over, l'she'edis nachalosei, Eibishter forgives them. Lahechzik lochad apik yichofetz chesedu. The Eibishter forgives l'she'edis nachalosei. But the Chazal and the Gemara actually say in Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara says, what does it mean, l'she'edis nachalosei? That one who lemi shemesim atzme kishirayim, one who makes himself like leftovers. Leftover mean, you finish a meal, you had the main thing, and then you leave over. The leftover is insignificant. That's leftovers. A person, the Gemara teaches, l'she'edis nachalosei. Who does Hashem forgive? Who does Hashem lahechzik la'ad apay, doesn't hold his anger forever? It's l'she'edis nachalosei, one who makes himself as leftover. Again, the level of bittul, the level of humility. He makes himself not as important, but I'm just like leftover. The Alter Rebbe explains, in this case, leftover means non-important. But what does it mean, leftover by Hashem? Hashem, the parts that Hashem cannot give to the world, that's left over by him. That's a very high madrege. The Rebbe explains that the people who consider themselves leftovers, they connect to the leftovers from Hashem. That's a very high level. Mavayir Shom. The Rebbe explained there, the Shirayim, hey mamakifim shalamaylo mihishtalshlus. The Shirayim leftovers, those represent the makifim which are higher than the hishtalshlus. The ha'oir, why they called leftover? Because there's a lot left over. It's just a little bit that can come down. The ha'oir nimshach, the ha'oir nimshach ba'olamais b'pnimiyis hu'ara bilvad. The light that extends into the world in an inner is only a shine alone. But the Iker Ha'oir, the main light, which is Hamakifim, that is the surrounding lights, Nishar Lamailo, that remains above, which is Shirayim, that's the leftover. He said the Shirayim over here by the person means leftover, means insignificance. But the leftover Lamailo is on a very high madrege. That is the part that was not able to come down into the world because in a pnimius is only ha'ora, can't accept that. So how do we extend, bring down, draw down these makifim? Who al yidei habitl? That is through bitl. L'she'edis nachalosei, making yourself like leftover. Your bitl is able to bring down the shirayim. V'zehu, the meaning of lemisha meisim atzmei kishirayim, the one who places himself like leftovers. Da'idei shemeisim atzmei kishirayim kipshutoi, through making himself like literally like leftovers, in the simple meaning leftovers, which means not important, which is bittul, level of humility, subjugation. That's the way specifically to bring down the makifim, the shirayim, is to bring down the shirayim. So he explains, the kasher avedosei bibchinas mitzius, when he serves the Eibishter in a level of a mitzius, Gam kisha ha'avoda hi betachlis ha'ilui, even if your service is in total greatness, perfect avoda, but it's still mitzias. Hamshocha shal yodahi. So what do you bring down through your perfect avoda? Ha'oir hashayich lihishtalshlus, a light which has a connection, which is connected to Ishtalshlus Mitzias, connected to Mitzias. Obechdei lahamshich hashirayim, the Lamailo, in order to draw down the Shiraim of above, Shalamailo, Mibichinas Mitzius, which is higher than being a Mitzius, to get the Shiraim, to get those Makifim, who Davki Ali, they have Bittel, that's only through Bittel. You can't be a Mitzius, even the greatest Mitzius, in the greatest Avodah, and bring down the level of Shirayim. For that, we need Bittel, because Mitzias can only bring the level which is Shaykhs to Lishtauslos, to Shaykhs to Mitzias. It is only through Bittel, Misha Mesim Atzma Kishirayim, through Bittel that you can be Mamshach the Shirayim. And the Rebbe brings now another place in Torah Oir. Ukemevuir Gam B'Torah Oir, as also explained in Torah Oir Pasik. Over there, they translate the pasuk that Torah mitzvahs only bring down pnimius, but bittul brings down the level of the makifim. So the pasuk says hashamayim. The pasuk explains kisi va'aretz hadem ragloi. So the shamayim, which is Torah, is kisi, brings down the eibishter va'aretz hadem ragloi. And the Oretz mitzvahs elevate. But Ezebayis, the Navi says, what kind of a home? The Makif. The Pasuk concludes, Velze abit el oni unecheruach. I look after the poor and the ones whose spirit is low. Basically, that all the hamshoches from Shemayim and the Oretz, the bayis hamshocha, the makif, is only through onin nechei ruach. The hamshocha shal yidei shamayim va'oretz. The hamshocha that comes through shamayim and oretz shehem Torah u'mitzvahs. Torah is shamayim, mitzvahs oretz. Hu oir pnimi. That's an inner light. Ubichdei lahamshich hamakifim. In order to draw down the makifim, which is a zebayis, that's already the house. A house is a makif. The makif who, the bayis who makif. Ube makifim atzmom makif harochet. And within makifim itself, that's the bar makif, because levushim, garments, are considered also makif. They surround the person, but they're close to the person. Bayis is the surrounding which is distant from the person. That's called the makif harochik. How do we bring down the bayis? Eza bayis, hu alidei habitl. That comes through bitl. Oni unechei ruach. That's why the pasuk says, "How elza abit onechei ruach." That through bitl you can get the level of makifim. Yeah. Look, the Torah explains there the Zehu Masha Amru Razal. Also, this explains what our sages says. The Pasuk in Pashti says, Allah Pasuk, Va'atu banayich tichi banoiser. You and your sons will live in leftover. So it says, what does it mean leftover? When are you going to live? Achi yichyu hamesim. Up till tchias hamesim, you're going to have that. What's the connection according to what we're explaining? The Kutatera explains the way we're explaining now. The noisar hu masha nishar l'maylo b'v'chinas makif. The leftover, the shirayim, is that's what remains above in the way of makif. Ube makifim atzmom, and we're talking within makif itself, makif harochik, the distant makif, because we have atik and arich. Arich is considered the close makif, and atik is the far makif, further away. Makifim atzmom, we're talking about the makif harochik, which is the level of atik. That's the level of atik. The arich hu makif hakorev. Arich is the close makif. The atik hu makif harochik. Bezehu tichyi banoisar ad sheyichyu hamesim. And this is what it means: live benoiser until the resurrection of the dead, because then Yichyu Hamesim is going to be the real expression from Atik, because we say that Chines Hamesim hu alidei talo denotif me Atiko, that's through the dew that comes from the level of Atik. That's where the Mason will resurrect. That's going to revive them from that dew, and that is connected to the Makiv Harochik, to the distant Makiv, which we have to wait its impact until Tchias HaMesim. But this is all tells us now that how could we reach the higher level? It's through the kelim reikim, through the empty, through feeling bittel, and feeling bittel reaches to the essence. V'zui hamayla, the inyan tichi banoisa shabo al yidei meriris mezeshu klirekum. This is the advantage that we say that you have the noiser, that the Yisra Noirman HaChoshech, the greater that comes through bitterness, mizeshu klirekom, that he's an empty vessel, which is pirush hasheni beklirekim al tamiti. That's the second interpretation. In empty vessels, don't make few, meaning that you have to think about being bitter, about realizing that you are an empty vessel. Al ha'inyan, and this is greater, the tichi benoisav, that you're going to live left over Shabbat al yidei she'oisik b'teiro mitzvahs, through the fact that he learns teiro mitzvahs hagam she'en le'avayira. That's interpretation. He doesn't have avayira. He's a klerekom because there's no avayira there, which is pirush harisha b'klerekom al tamiti, which is the first interpretation in kelim rekom al tamiti. He hayisra noisar, because the noisar, the yisra, the advantage. B'zeh she'oisik b'teiro mitzvahs. Gam kishein le'avavira, that he occupies himself in Torah mitzvahs, even though he doesn't have avavira. Huzeh. So what happens then? Shaos kiyum Torah mitzvahs shaloi koshurim koyach hamsidus nefesh. So then your Torah mitzvahs is tied to the power of Mesidus Nefesh, to the Etzem HaNeshama. The Inyan Hamsidus Nefesh, umitzad Etzem HaNeshama, the idea, the devotion of the soul comes from the essence of the soul. Shalamaylo mikoichas hagiluyim, which is higher than the revealed avira. So with fear and love and fear. So even though it's a clear ekom, even though there is no avira there in the kelim, but yet the kelim have the essence of the neshama, the mesidus nefesh of the neshama. So what happens then? Avol mikol mokoim, but still, kivon shal yidei esak ha'torah, since through his occupation of Torah, gam kishekiyum ha'torah mitzvahs hu, al yidei shezoicher inyan mesidus nafshe lahabaya. Even if he learns Torah mitzvahs, he does it is because he remembers his mesidus nefesh to Hashem. The Rebbe brought down from the Alter Rebbe, from the Tanya, that he is infused with the level of mesidus nefesh to Hashem, even though he doesn't understand, he doesn't have ava v'yira, there is no love and fear there, but still his essence of the nefesh. But the Rebbe explains still, while this is a madrege of mesidus nefesh, eine mizbatel mimitziusei, he does not negate his entity. He remains an entity. Why? Sharizeshu mekayim Torah mitzvahs tolui b'ritzoinoi. This that he does Torah mitzvahs, that is up to his will. He wants to do it, which Ratzin is Mitzias Adam. If you say you want to do it, that's an entity. That means there is a Mitzias. You are the one that wants to do the Torah mitzvahs. You haven't lost your Mitzias. The Rebbe in the Ha'ara here explains a very important Ha'ara in Ha'ara 31. The Rebbe explains that Mesidus Nefesh, in essence, is not really I want Mesidus Nefesh. Mesidus Nefesh is because a person cannot be separated from Hashem. So Here we're saying his Mesiras Nefesh is something that he chooses, is his Metzias, is his Ratzon. But the Rebbe asks, the Mesiras Nefesh of a Yid is not really on his Ratzon. It can't be any other ways, as he brings down from the Hemshech Samach Vav, a person cannot be separated from Hashem's oneness. But the Rebbe explains that applies when you actually have Mesiras Nefesh in actuality. We're talking about when it comes a test and you have to give up your life, then the level of your Yechida is revealed so that your essence is revealed. But as long as you don't have Mesiras Nefesh in actuality, it's only remembering the Mesiras Nefesh, which helps him stand against his Yetzer. For the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, so then the fact that he's standing against his Yetzer by remembering the Mesiras Nefesh means that he wants to stand against his Yetzer. The Rebbe is mechalik between actual Mesiras Nefesh and Mesiras Nefesh when the person is remembering the Mesiras Nefesh. Remembering the Mesiras Nefesh is still a level of Metzias, still the person is a Metzias over there. Whereas when you actually practice Mesiras Nefesh in a situation, then you lose your Metzias. Anyways, that's an idea. But here, the Rebbe is explaining that even though Mesiras Nefesh, you are the one that want it, and wanting is the Metzias. So therefore, Hagilu the Etzem HaNeshama Shebazeh, the revelation of the essence of the neshama in that rotzin hurak kemoishe shayechos lekoiches hageluyim. That's only as it's connected to the revealed koiches. Al yidei shezoiched inya mesidas nafshi lahavaye shemitzad etzem haneshama. Through him remembering the mesidas nefesh to Hashem, which his essence wants, is always there. That's why the desire to do Torah mitzvahs is with a great force, notwithstanding he has no Ava v'yira, but he doesn't have koichas agluim, but he has mesiras nefesh b'teikav gadol. And v'lochein, gam ha'hamshocha shenimshechas milmayla al yidei zeh, what is drawn down from above through this level of Mesiras Nefesh, who are oir shelamayla meishtalshelus k'moi shehu shayich leishtalshelus. That's the light which is higher than ishtalshelus, as it is connected to ishtalshelus, which would be like the level of arich, the bechlolus makif akorav arich. Generally speaking, this would be the close makif, higher than Ishtalshelus, but still connected to Ishtalshelus. But by Yisrael Shenasa al Yidei HaHergesh VaMediris Mizeshu Klerekon, but the advantage that becomes through the feeling and the bitterness that I'm an empty vessel, Klerekon, Mikimon Shal Yidei Zehu Mizbatel Mimitzius. Since through that feeling, through that Merirus, he is negated from his being, from his metzias. Nimshach al yidei zeh hagilui de etzem haneshama. Through that, it extends, it's drawn down. The revelation etzem haneshama k'moish lemayla mishayichus lekoichas hagiluyim. As it's higher than being connected to the reveal, it's a total light, it's a makif arochi. And similarly is the same thing what extends through this avoida, which is totally higher than koichas hagiluyim, what it comes from above. By feeling by himself, that he's an empty vessel, which means Shein B'Shum Maila, he has no greatness, there's no Maila, he has no advantage. V'hu K'mo, 'Kemo, 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 Dover hamiyutar. Dover hamiyutar means something which is extra. Noiser. Atu manayich tichye ba noiser. Ha'inyan de tichye ba noiser. This is the living the benoiser. Shal yidezu hamshochas makif harochik atik. That's the way we bring down the makif harochik atik. So the Rebbe explained with this Alter Rebbe's Maimer, that he explained in the idea of Shirayim, that what the Posik says, L'sheiris nachalosei, and the different levels of through Bittel, the Rebbe explains the two different levels of Yisrael and Achoshech in the Kelim Reikim, that there is the level which is Mesiras Nefesh, which is the Kli Reiko with Mesiras Nefesh, which draws down the Makif HaKoref, the level of Arich, and then through the level of Bittel, level of Kelim Reikim, feeling that you have no advantage and you lose your Metzias, then you're Mamshich from the Makif Harochik, from the level of Atik. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to ask to explain further the Pasuk, because here in the Pasuk, we're saying the At Ubonayich. What did we say? How did we explain that he came to take away the children? What are the children? That's the Ava V'yira. They're the Tulis, as he brought down from the Tanya. But here the Pasuk doesn't just say that you will live with the Noisar. It says you and your children will live with the Noisar, which means that also the Ava V'yira will be. How does that happen? How is the Ava V'yira infused, especially if we say Makif Harochik, Tzorich Lumdalet. Tzorich Lahovin, you have to understand, Masha Kosuv, Atu Banayich, Tichi Banoisar. You and your children will live with the Noisar. Shakam ha'av v'ha'yira dahaneshama. Also, that love and the fear of the neshama, which is bonayich, those are the children. Yichyu banoiser, they will be living with that additional yisrein ha'oir that comes down through this whole struggle that we did through the kelim reikim. Seemingly, Mekivon shenoiser hu makiv, since noiser means that we're bringing down the level of makiv, ubefrat la pirush, especially according to the second interpretation, la pirush noiser hu makiv harochik. So what is the tichi ba noiser here, the noiser? It's either arich or atik, but it's very high level. How does it fit to draw down from the level of Makiv Korev to the Koiches Apnimim Abavira? Yes, Alpi Masha Kosuvad Marashab Nishmos Eden. I explain this with the Rebbe Rashab Nishmos Eden, and you notice that the Rebbe is bringing down all the Maimorim from the Rebbe Rashab, Samach Vov, Samach Zayin, and Ein Gimel, I think it was, and now the Rebbe is explaining all the Maimorim, all the different from the Rebbe Rashab, the Baliyem Hayoledes. So he said, by Mamori Divra Maschil, Kiamitzvah Hazois, Asher Aneich Metzavucha Hayoim, Loi Nifleisim, Emcho, Velo Rechaki. The Maimer bases on the Pasuk that the mitzvah that I tell you today, the Pasuk says, it's not Niflei Simemcha and not far, not wondrous, not separated from you, it's not distant from you. This is a Maimer, the Rebbe says, B'Sefer HaMaimorim Shaloi Shemachinim Atol Lidfus. This is from the Sefer Maimorim of the Rebbe Rashab, which is actually being printed at that point. So this was the Maimorim Tov Reish Ayin Beis, Tov Reish Ayin Vov, the Rebbe Hemshech Torah, the Rebbe encouraged, they printed it So so over there he says in that Maimer, the Shnei Han the Shoinus Niflas V'Rechoika Hem Ba'atik V'Arich. When it says it's Nifles and Rechoika, distant and separate, wonders from you, represent the two levels of Atik and Arich. The level of Atik and Arich. The Pele, the word Pele means wonder, Shuloshin, separate, that distinguish, Shuloshin Hafrosha V'Havdalah, which is a language of separation and distinction, Hu Ba'atik. That's in the level of Atik. That's the level of Pele. Shenetak V'Nivdal Ma'ishtalshalus. That has been removed, moved, and separated from Ishtalshul. That's Atik. But v'richuk, when we say rechoika, distant, hibarich. When you the loshin the richuk, when you say far, moida sheyesh lo, that points sheyesh lo shayches lahadovor shu rochik mimenu, that he has a connection to the item that is far from him. There is a connection to that matter. That means rochik is far, but it's far away from him, but it has a connection. Ukamoi, like for example, the Pasuk says, Shlomo Melech said, Omarti achakmo, I said that I would be wise, but it's far from me, which means, Omarti achakmo, why did he say I'm going to be wise? Because wisdom has a connection to Shlomo Melech. V'rak, what he's saying, it's far from him. So he's smart, but it's far from him, but it means there's a connection. So the Rebbe Rashab explains, the Masha Kosovo, the Pasuk says, Kamitzvah hazois, loy nifleis hi mimcho davke. We say that it's not in Atik, it's not in Arich, it's Mimcho, Leniflesi Mimcho, Mimcho Davke, which means when it comes to you ordinarily, why is that? Ki Kibun Sham Mitzvahs Heim Rotzen HaElyon. Since mitzvahs are Hashem's, the Supreme's will, Rotzen Shelemayla Mitam, and we talk about a will, the Eibishter wants it, which doesn't have a reason. Heim bevchinas pele v'richuk. It's wondrous as far because there is no ability to comprehend, to be able to grasp it. So it's far. That's nifles and rechoika. And certainly when we talk about mitzvah tshuva, because the pasuk over there really discusses teshuva. The mitzvah hazois koya mitzvah tshuva. When it says mitzvah hazois is not far, leirchoika v'lei nifleisi, goes on tshuva. K'meshekosu v'Ramban v'kam meforshim, as the Ramban and many meforshim write, so that this is the level of tshuva. Mitzvah tshuva, shehi l'mayla merotz in that mitzvahs. It's even a higher level than the will for mitzvahs. That's why if you violate Hashem's will that He wants you to do mitzvahs, you can still do tshuva. That means that the level of the will of teshuva is greater than the level of the will of mitzvahs. The mitzvah hazo is koi al mitzvahs shehi l'mayla merotz the mitzvahs. Ukemavur bekama mekoimes, as explained in many places. The zesh alidei hatshuva mismalim kol hapegomim. Why is it that tshuva can fill all the blemishes? Ulifisha tshuva magas ba'ir sof bal harotzen, is because tshuva reaches in the Ein Sof, the master of the will. So when you violate the will, that's the master's will. But when you tap into the master of the will, Shalamayla Marotz, and that mitzvah is higher than mitzvahs, and therefore you can do teshuvah, because the same master that said to do the mitzvah accepts your teshuvah now. V'achi magas, not only in Bal Harotz and Ein Sof, all the way to Atzvus. Zeu mashe kosuv, and that's why the pasuk says, "Ki mitzvah hazois asher anoichi metzavacho." Anoichi represents anoichi mishanoichi, a very high level. Shehi bevadai bevchinas pele verichuk. This is all on the level of distant and far away. And the two levels of Pele and Richuk refers to the lower level of Tshuva and the higher level of Tshuva. The lower level of Tshuva is distant, and the higher level of Tshuva is Pele. The Tshuva Tato, Hibichinas Richuk, the lower level of Tshuva is far distant. Utshuva Ilo, Hibichinas Pele. That's wondrous. Ki Tshuva Tato, in the neshama, in the levels, he b'makif the chaya. That's in the level of makif, of the level of chaya of the neshama, which is makif hakorif, the close makif. The gam hahamshocha milmaila, and what we bring down from above, hanimsheches al yidei teshuva tator, that comes through the lower level of teshuva, he amakiv the eriyoshor. That's the makif of the straight light, the light that comes down, that has a connection to the pnimi. The beklolu su'arich generally is arich. Basically, tshuva tator reaches in the level of the makif of the chaya, of the neshama, and therefore it brings down the level of rachaik, the level of makif, the level of arich, and a level of makif hakorev that has a connection to the pnimi, which is arich. Utshuva ilo he b'makif the yechida. The higher level of tshuva is makif the yechida, which is makif harochim. So that's in the soul of the person. He, and what comes down, he amakiv the oir choizer. That's the makif of the returning light, not a direct, but the returning light shalemailo mishaychus lipnimis, which is higher than having a connection to the inner. The bechlolus hu atik, general is atik. So therefore, what we're saying over here, we have the level of teshuva, and the level of teshuva brings down atik, and it brings down arich. It brings down the highest level, through the makif of yichida and the makif of the chaya. What does it mean that it's not distant and it's not wondrous, not separate? The neshamas Yisrael, yesh b'makoil, Yidden have everything. V'gam milmayla noisla makoil, and also from above you give them everything. V'lochein ein zan nifla v'rochik mehem. That's why it's not wondrous, it's not distant from them. Mimcha lo nifleisi mimcha v'lo rechoika. We get all these madreges sai from our neshama and sai the hamshoches, and we get the makifim, both of the level of arich and also the level of atik. Okay, we'll continue.
Okay.
Some heavy chassidus, Baruch Hashem.